Hello, and welcome back to Blue Ribbon Garage. The PTO shaft removal, rock shaft, this whole thing that I've been, series of videos, if you will, culminated to, it started off as a PTO clutch rebuild and ended up being something completely different, much cheaper, much less labor intensive. Just a little bit of searching around for some parts. I didn't have to look too terrible far because this 2010 utility they're out there. I mean, there was a bunch of them made, so I mean, there are parts out there. Unfortunately, you will have to go through a salvage yard, most likely, to get the pieces that you need for this typical repair. The weak link is this drive gear. This drive gear, the way it is built is you open up the PTO housing, the gearbox, take that off the back of the tractor like I had in the other video. You open it up. This is your I can't remember if this is the 540 drive, which couples right to the PTO shaft. Then there is the idler gear, and then you have the 1000 gear tube above it. I had a couple of problems with what I had going on inside there. One of which is the very common reason why this PTO goes bad in this model tractor. This gear, just a little milled slug, has a hole. This tube, which is what the your PTO shaft that couples to the drive shaft, also has a hole. Well, these are milled to be one piece. It has a pin that goes through the center of them. There's a bearing, there's a C-clip, there's a bearing, and then a C-clip, and then that fits into the housing. And 9 times out of 10, this little drill steel pin breaks, and which allows this to spin freely inside of here, letting it render the PTO useless. I found this in Main Tractors, Salvage, I believe it was the name of the company. I think it was $275. A couple of the other places was anywhere between $275 and $350, I think it was. Now, I have been told, and you probably could get away with getting a new piece of drill steel the same size as what came out of it, put it back together, or punch the old one out, put it back together, push a new piece of drill steel pin in there, and you'd probably be good enough. I've also been told that this whole assembly is to be one unit. That's the option I went with. I'll probably get another piece of drill steel just to put this back together to have a spare on the shelf to get me by the next time this happens. So that was problem number one. Issue number two was the idler gear. The idler gear, noticeably, is missing one tooth and 2/3 of another tooth. That was issue number two. The gears on this tube all seem to be fine. I don't know why it bound up and broke this one, but it did. Issue number 3 was this flange, which is missing there's a piece of tube, which it looks a lot like a flange with a piece of fence tubing sticking out of it. This tube goes on the back of the PTO housing and allows the carrier and unit carrier to ride as the forks slide back and forth. It allows that carrier to slide back and forth on that tube instead of letting it ride on the shaft. Mine didn't have this. It had the flange, but it didn't have the tube. Originally, whenever this went down, I was brush hogging and felt a very violent shudder in the tractor. It only lasted a couple of seconds. It stopped. Then it started again. A couple of seconds. It stopped. Did that 2 or 3 times, and then I lost complete power of the PTO. What I'm thinking happened was the tube that was on here was missing. There's no pieces of it inside. There was no pieces of it inside the gearbox, inside the PTO clutch housing area, inside the body of the tractor. I know this PTO has been worked on once before by Darrell and Sons place here in town. So I don't even know if it was ever even in there. But what I think happened was that carrier and the throwout bearing was just riding on the PTO shaft itself. It had caught enough friction to just sling the carrier and the throwout bearing, just start spinning it crazy, throwing everything out of balance, and then it'd settle down, and then it'd sling it around again, throw it out of, get it all off balance again, which ultimately caused everything to fail. But I know I didn't take very good documentation of when I took the PTO box apart, but I did want to explain what pieces I had fail and give you a little breakdown of what each one was doing and what I ended up ultimately having my problems with. So, like I said, this is a very typical problem of this pin breaking. Why John Deere did that to make this the weak point and not let the clutch slip and do its job instead of breaking this pin and having to dig everything apart. That's, what is that? I couldn't even tell you how big around. It's smaller than the diameter of a pencil. Why would you do that? But it's John Deere. They do their stuff crazy. It is what it is. The tractor's fixed. I'll have it for the spring. It's ready to go. This was the culmination of the reasoning why, after I got everything apart, of why it failed ultimately. So I hope everyone enjoyed, at least got a little bit of information of working on this model tractor. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. If you can, like it, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I try to get a little bit of something on there, from Jeeps to just a little bit of anything and everything I'm into. I appreciate you watching the series. Check out my other stuff if it helps anybody along their trail in life. Then I did my job. Thanks again. Blue Ribbon Garage out.